big changes to Redstone minecarts, bundles, and over 200 bug fixes. Hello there, Ray here, and let's take a look at this new version, which is a 1.21.2 snapshot called 24W33A. There's a lot of changes in this one, so make sure you guys are still subscribed and leave a like on the video, and let's get started. To get the new experimental features, you have to start a new world, click on experiments, turn on the bundles with this one, turn on the minecart improvements, or the redstone experiments, and there's even the older villager trading rebalance. Since that's not in the game, it's still considered an experiment. And then just click done. Then you can create your new world. The new bundle is really easy to craft, only needing a single piece of leather instead of the rabbit hide before, and one piece of string. So you don't even need a crafting table to craft this. And they made the recipe cheaper because there was a lot of feedback of people complaining that the rabbit hide was just hard to get and expensive for such an early game item. You can see the new bundle looks different. It says bundles can hold a mixed stack of items. It says it's empty. And then there is the extra information, which you could turn on with F3H. So just like before, you can hold the bundle and then click into different slots with your left mouse, and this will pull in the items. Or you could grab the individual items and left click to put them inside. When you right click the bundle, you're always going to pull out the very first items and pull up the slime. And if you hover over top of another slot and then use right click, you're going to swap out the bundle for whatever item is in that slot, just like you could do with any other slot and item in your inventory. Now you can see as we're adding items to the bundle, the progress bar on the bottom is slowly filling up. So it shows you how much room is left inside of it. Once you get more than 8 items, you can see that it will only show you 8 slots. And then it'll just show you that there is a plus 5 items also inside that can't show up in this little GUI. Now another new feature is that you can select not only just the first item by right clicking the item to get them out, but you can actually choose any of the 8 slots by using your scroll wheel. So if I scroll over, now I'm hovering over top of the sand, you can see it's highlighted. It's also showing up here in this little image of the bundle in your inventory with the little sand popping out. If I hover over the leather, you can see now leather shows up. You can actually scroll through here and choose what item you want. So after you chose your item, if you right click, you'll actually pull that unique item out, even though it wasn't at the very top of your bundle. And this new little GUI that's for the bundle is a new feature that they've never had in Minecraft before. It only works when you hover over top of the bundle. You can also use your number keys to move to different slots. So push 4 to go to that slot, and then right click to pull it out. And if you continue scrolling, it's just going to loop back around to the first slot. Now if you do pull items out, notice that the empty slot is in the front. The bundle just doesn't slide all the items to the very front again. And like before, you can hold the bundle in your main hand, and then you can right click to throw out all the items at once, which will completely empty it. Now the cool behavior of the bundle is that you can hold up to 64 unique items as long as the bundle doesn't go over the limit of having 64 total items. This way when you're traveling, you have a lot of like 1 or 2 items that fill up your normal inventory, you can put them in here and they will take up a lot less room. The downside is you can only see the first 8 slots. So it might be worth coming in and just putting in a second bundle in your inventory that has another 8 items. That way you can easily see what you have. And yes, you can stick bundles inside of bundles still. You can make like nesting dolls with bundles where you put one bundle into another bundle and then pick that bundle up with a new bundle. So that when you right click, you can throw out a bundle that has more bundles in it, that has more bundles in it. Or you could also put a whole bunch of bundles into a single bundle. Although you can't stack bundles to 16, they do act like they stack to 16. Because you can only put 16 of them inside of another bundle, similar to something like ender pearls, which only stack to 16. And if you pick up like a whole stack of ender pearls inside of the bundle, you can see it completely fills it. And if something that's non-stackable, like the sword here, you can only pick up one of those before it fills up. But when it comes to shulkers, you can't actually pick up shulkers in bundles like you could in the past where you can make infinite storage. But you can, of course, store your bundles in a shulker so that you can actually have more unique items within your shulker that you could then put into your ender chest so you can save it. Overall, bundles are going to be really important for early game, maybe a little bit mid game, but currently their functions are so limited that they're not going to be useful for end game or past the end game. So this doesn't solve the overall storage problem that players have with their inventories. So what do you think of the new improved bundles? With redstone experiments turned on, this changes out the redstone wire dust to make it more performance friendly. Now throughout Minecraft history, redstone wire has always caused a lot of problems when there was a lot of updates. Throughout the years, they've been slowly adding in new features so that they create less updates every time they turn on and off. This is because every time they would turn on, they would go through the different redstone signals from power 1 all the way up to power 15. Then they would also try to go around and update nearby blocks around each of their pieces. And by the time it did this, going across all these different pieces, it would create tons of updates, which would actually lag down your game, especially if you had them flickering like this. One of the improvements they made is that the redstone wire will only give updates to blocks that can actually receive power from redstone. So here I got an example. We got our piston, which normally can receive redstone. Here we got a piston which is being bud powered, which means block update detector. Essentially, if you place any block beside this piston, it would then update because it's being quasi connectivity powered by this redstone block over here. This is how updates used to be done before there was like observers. So if I have this piston and that piston and I turn on the redstone dust, notice that this piston turns on, but despite this redstone updating right beside this piston here, it doesn't actually cause the piston to extend. Where without this experimental change, if you would create updates with this redstone here, even though they're not directly pointing into this piston here, this redstone would try to update blocks nearby, including this piston, and even though it isn't directly powering it, it just updates the piston, making it check to see if it's actually being powered, and it just happens to be powered by this block here, and that's why it extends. Now they said that these experimental redstone changes aren't going to be like forced into the game in a future version, but are just something that they're testing out and looking for feedback. So although we can all agree that this would reduce the amount of lag, this would also break some types of contraptions where this piston actually does need to be updated. But you could always come in and just change out how you wire up your redstone. So another change that comes with this experimental version with the redstone wire is that before a line of wire causes block updates, the new signal strength of all connected wires is set, rather than doing these individually, which was creating a lot of lag. The next thing they change is what actually happens when the redstone updates. So if I put like power here and I power this, both these pistons are getting powered at the exact same time since there's no delay between them. But which piston will actually be able to extend? Because only one of them is going to do that. Now in the past it was locational. Depending on where the redstone is placed within the actual Minecraft grid here, it would update in a certain order. So maybe the game would be updating this direction first and actually update this piston first, even though this one seems much closer to the actual power source. And because of that way of doing it, it meant that some things would work a certain way in some locations, but then if you would move them, they might work differently. A recent example you guys might have heard of is my automatic brewing system, which is really small, but there is some locations where it doesn't properly remove the bottom potion. So if you end up building it in that location, you have to move it for it to work. So this next change, they're trying to resolve it so that if you have the lever closer to one side, that side is always going to be updated first. And if the lever is closer to the other side, it's always going to update that side first. And it doesn't matter where you put this in the world or how you rotate it or flip it or mirror it, it's always going to act this way. And if you decide to put it right between two of them, it's going to be a bit random. You can see over time, both sides will actually extend, but it randomly chooses between them because it's equal distance. This changes to fix all the different type of orientation problems that come with redstone. Overall, this is probably a really good thing because I know you guys probably get really confused by how some redstone components work. Or contraptions like this, where this block gets powered the exact same time the piston actually pushes it, you might end up getting the power to go through to the repeater in some places. In other places, it would not work. But with this experimental change, it would always be consistent. Or something like this, where you send the redstone through to this repeater over here. Now the update order is also predictable when it comes to a single line. We got 3 pistons here, so which piston is technically going to push first? As you know, the game only can do kind of one thing at a time, but one of these pistons is going to get pushed first, even though they're all going to occur at the same game tick. Well, this is also deterministic, and that is determined by the direction of the wire. So if the power is coming from this direction, when it gets to this block here, it's going to update on the back side. So if there was a piston over here, it would update that one first. Then the front piston, then the left piston, then the right piston, and then the piston that was underneath of it, and then if there was a piston above it, it would update that one. So no matter how you move these pistons around in the world, it's always going to be determined in that order from the direction that the actual power is coming. But you don't see this actual updating order when it comes to powering it. They just all appear to go at the same time. and a situation like this where this piston is getting powered and then it's powering this block, which is then powering this piston. When we power it, the top piston has priority over the bottom piston because it's actually getting powered by the redstone, where the bottom piston is then getting powered by the block. So it'll always be consistent in which one gets pushed. It also seems that they have updated the actual looks of the redstone. So it looks more glowy than before. Now there is some known issues with this whole experimental thing. Since they only did this change to the redstone wire, interactions with other components may not actually act as expected, especially when it comes to the updating order. And I think this is an example of it. When we power this, it just randomly will have one of the pistons extend. It's not always the same piston, even though their update order should say that the left one updates this block and therefore updates this piston first before the right one does. So what do you think of these redstone changes? The third toggleable change is related to minecarts. So now minecarts will be much smoother when it comes around to corners and stuff. Notice how the player is turning around this corner. It looks so strange. It does seem different. I don't know. It's definitely smoother, but there's also some aspects of it that seem a little bit choppy. I guess it's the minecart that seems a bit choppy, but the player's view seems pretty good. When it goes around that actual tree there, it kind of slows down as it takes that turn right here, this 90-degree turn, really slowly. Now the whole idea with the whole minecart change is to make it so that minecart transportation can compete with later endgame transportation like Elytra. And they are really looking for feedback with this, as they're not planning to force us into a future Minecraft version, but want to hear what people have to say about it. So what do you guys think of smoother transportation? Now they did say because of the way the player moves, this will actually break some contraptions related to minecarts, as the player themselves is actually kind of changing their location to make it smooth so that they're not in the same spots they were before. So if you're like aiming, trying to hit something, it'd be a little bit different. They also made it so that minecarts are less likely to abruptly halt or derail. You guys didn't know minecarts can actually derail when they go really fast. And I actually did a whole video 8 years ago about weird tricks and mechanics to do with the minecarts, which still apply to modern day. So they really haven't changed minecarts that much throughout the years. They also made it so that minecarts will jump better. They will keep their vertical momentum when the track ends with a slope. And you can do this in survival just by having a rail up here and pushing it over top another rail, and this will break one rail, but then it'll make this one be a sloped rail. If we power this and updates, well, it's not stable that way, but if you set everything up ahead of time, it will stay like that. And then we got you ride our minecart and see how well it does with this jump. Whee! Ooh, wow, that's actually really cool and smooth. You can do this also with just an incline rail like so. Now you might remember way back in the day of minecarts, your character would actually turn with the minecart wherever it was pointing. Where now your player will always just face the same direction the minecart moves underneath. But you can actually change this now under accessibility settings. Go down here to where it says rotate with the minecart, turn this on. Then you can experience how it was back in the olden days. Oh my goodness. I really like this toggle because I can use this in farms so the player can click on certain things using one type of toggle. But if you want them always facing the same way, you can always just use the default. There's also a new game rule called minecart max speed. By default it would be 8, but you can set this as high as you want. Now the minecarts aren't limited by the actual max speed. Look how fast they're going, holy muggers. This is insane. But the minecart's still limited by turns and stuff. Wow. Oh my goodness, it just keeps picking up speed. Oh my goodness, look how fast. Dude, this is just hurting my eyes. How does the game even keep up with this? Oh my goodness. It also comes with the change where you cannot have more than one minecart placed inside of each other. So if I place another one, it uses up the minecart. If I break it, you see I only get one minecart. So I just deleted the other one. So this would stop for people using minecarts as a way to get entity cramming. But overall, I don't think that is a good change, because not only entity cramming, sometimes you need to have several minecarts in the same area so that you can actually push some things, because some things don't push very well in Minecraft, like some type of entities that get stuck. And even using a dispenser to dispense it on, you can see it's not actually working unless it's empty here. But they did fix it so that minecarts can sit beside each other without actually pushing each other, which used to only happen in one direction, but the other direction they would shove each other apart. They also made it easier to pick up mobs with a minecart when they are moving along the rail, but they still don't really pick them up. They're not at least really close to the actual rail in minecart. Now there is some known issues with this, such as minecarts getting pushed with pistons in like a piston bolt, as well as problems that occur with very delicate rail network, where the timing is important and is now messed up with this whole movement change. As well as when it comes to the minecarts snapping to the rail, you can see it's a little bit different. So those are the 3 experimental changes. The one that's probably definitely going to come out is the bundle. But besides just these experimental changes, it also came out with a lot of changes that are actually going to be implemented in the next full release. Now typically when boats or minecarts go through portals, they can't go back through a portal until the 15-second cooldown is up. But they made special exceptions for boats and minecarts, so now they can go through after just half a second, which means I can change out how my nether portal chunk loading without a player works, something I discovered over 8 years ago, despite it not being in the Minecraft changelogs until much more recent. Now before, we'd always have to destroy the minecart because it had a cooldown and put in a new one, which had no cooldown, so it'd go through the portal again. But now since it has such a short cooldown, it just comes over here, bounces back, and touches a portal, and it gets teleported back to the other side. And every time it goes back and forth, it's re-updating the cooldown for the actual chunks on the other side so that they are being constantly loaded. I talk all about how chunk loading works in this video here, so check it out. And if you're curious on all the different types of farms that you can build in the chunks without needing a player, I did a whole separate video on those. And they answer a lot of common questions I see people ask. Now I still would recommend using items to go through because it's possible for you to unload the world, which would unload all chunks including the ones on the other side at the exact same time that the minecart is in that area, therefore freezing the minecart, and then that would prevent the chunk loader from continuing to work. Now projectiles also got their cooldown reduced from the typical 15 seconds down to just 2 ticks, which is 1/10 of a second. So I can throw this pearl through this nether portal here, and it'll actually teleport me back into the overworld into a completely different spot. That's because I threw the pearl through that portal, went through the nether, and if we go through nether we can see what it did, and went through here, and went through this portal here, a second portal, which is a little ways away, so that its 2 game tick cooldown goes up, and then it goes back through this portal, which is a different portal, and then it gets shot out of this portal, and then it just happened to land over here, and that's how it ended up teleporting. So this is an extremely fast way to teleport to somewhat near locations just by properly linking up your nether portals. And you can also set this up so that it'll teleport you up really high or really down low. You just gotta know how to properly link your overworld side nether portals to the nether side ones. And I did cover that in this video here if you want to learn how that's all done. But then all you need is some ender pearls, and you can easily transport from one area to a different area almost seamlessly, which will make ender pearls more useful, but they're a little bit annoying to carry around, and they do run out compared to elytra, which lasts a lot longer and can do a similar thing. Now this could also be applied into my gas looting setup, where the player can be in one dimension spawning in mobs, and then they can shoot fireballs through the portal, but rather than just having the ball go pretty close and kill some mobs, we can actually have the fireball go a little bit further, and then send it through like another nether portal to go out to a completely different location so we can apply looting while the player is AFKing. That is completely renewable and doesn't use up any material. Where in the past I had to kind of bring the mobs closer to the player, where this opens the door to having the mobs kind of stay where they're spawned at, and we can just bring the damage to them, while still also getting the looting effect. Though it might be more difficult to actually collect the items depending on how big an area the mobs are spread out over. There is a new video settings, which is called Reduce FPS when AFK. Limits frame rates to 30 when the game is not getting any player input for more than a minute. Further limits to 10 after 9 more minutes. So if you don't move your character or do any kind of clicking or anything, instead of upgrading your screen like 60 times per second, I'll reduce it down to 30. And then if you AFK for a total of 10 minutes, it'll drop it all the way down to 10. Now I typically have my FPS at 110. Even though YouTube only records at 60, this lets me get a little bit higher quality in my videos. Let's go ahead and drop it down to 10 and see what 10 looks like. This is what 10 FPS looks like. Okay, let's turn that back, and then we can also change this to minimize, so that it'll only do this low FPS thing if you have the entire game window minimized. So you can toggle between those. I think this is pretty nice. That way if you happen to leave your Minecraft game open while you're doing something else and you're on a lower end computer, you don't feel the effects of the game applying to your other things you're working on. But what do you think of this change? But they added in some new server properties, including pause when empty, where the server will automatically pause after a certain number of seconds if there is no players online. So you want to make sure this is turned off, as the default is 60 seconds if you're trying to run farms on your server without players online, such as in your spawn chunks. You can now breed dogs together by just using different types of fish. They even eat tropical fish, and they even eat puffer fish. I guess that's a great way to use up all your extra puffer fish. And they can also eat rabbit stew. This is all to make it parity with Bedrock Edition. You can now also find the suspicious stew recipes all inside of the crafting grid, so you can easily craft them up. All of the banner patterns now have new images and names, which look much nicer and easier to understand. Including 2 banner patterns that are unique to Bedrock Edition are now in Java. Field Masoned banner pattern, which can be crafted with paper and bricks, and also the border indented banner pattern, which can be crafted with vines and paper. So now you'll need those patterns in order to get those unique looks on your banner, when before you could just do it by using color and a banner to place it onto. And smithing templates also got their names shortened, so they don't have the word smithing template in all their names, so it looks a lot more cleaner. They also went through and redid all the rarity colors of all the items in the game. The items with their name in white are common, things in yellow are uncommon, cyan things are considered rare, where pink things are considered epic. So these are all the items that got changed. You can now naturally find baby squid. Look at this little cute guy. Babies are always half the size as their adults. This is to make parity with Bedrock Edition, and you can even right click an adult with an egg to make a bunch of baby squids. This also applies to dolphins. You can find naturally spawned in baby dolphins. They're so cute. As well as baby versions of glow squid. I'm really glad they're bringing in more variations of babies in the game. The only downside to this is that babies usually don't provide any drops. So if I just kill one of these, we're not going to get like any glow ink. And because these are going to spawn into like squid farms or glow squid farms or even a dolphin farm, you're going to get less loot overall. If you guys do want to make like a glow squid or squid farm, check out this video here. It's a really nice design of mine. And you can even make a dolphin farm if you want to. They also made it so that salmon come in with 2 different types. There is big salmon as well as smaller salmon. Look at the difference between the little ones and the big ones. Holy muggers. But even killing a small one will give you loot, just like killing a big one. It's mostly just to give some variation in sizes. They changed it so bats can now spawn at any Y level long as it is dark. When before they would only spawn below sea level, and only during like around the month of Halloween would they spawn slightly higher. So you typically wouldn't see bats on the surface unless it was around Halloween time. Now, I don't really like this change, but I guess they did it kind of give some ambient mobs flying around in your world at night. Even though bats can't interfere with a lot of different types of redstone components, they are just kind of annoying overall. You guys probably experienced the derpiness of squids. Notice this squid here just appears to sometimes go right into the walls. And look at that, it's almost like clipped right through there. It looks like it's almost just ignoring where the blocks are even holding it in. And this derpiness has been in the game for 9 years and is finally getting fixed today. So no longer have the crazy flying squids. Another old 9-year-old bug has to do with entities that move so fast that they aren't recognized by things like tripwires. So notice these fireworks were able to get detected, but here we got some wind charges. When we send those upwards, they also get detected. But then we have some fire charges over here, and if we send these up, all of a sudden they just don't get detected. Now this happens in a wide range of different places. I even put in 3 layers of tripwire hooks trying to detect those fire charges. And this is because the way it was working is that the entity would move so fast that it would be in one location when the game checks during one game tick, which is 1/20th of a second. And then the game says, okay, this arrow here is moving so fast that direction that the next game tick should be over here. So the next game tick comes along and it puts the arrow over here, but it forgot to check to see if it actually went through anything. thing, such as this tripwire, and because of that we can get stuff that moves really fast and goes through things without actually activating it or getting teleported, as this problem can occur with any type of block that doesn't have a collision. Notice the arrows go right through this end portal here, rather than being teleported over into the end dimension. And usually when it comes to like trying to send stuff through nether portals, they're moving really fast. The way we solve this is just by stacking a bunch of nether portals together, so that if it doesn't get teleported by the first one, it gets teleported by the second one. This is not something you can easily do with end portals. Now we can use like TNT or breeze charges to send the player or even like an ender pearl through portals really quickly, and they should get consistently teleported over into the other dimension and continue moving, but you still have to deal with entity processing chunks, meaning that if you throw the pearl too far away into the nether dimension, it won't be able to teleport you over there because it actually flew out into unloaded chunks. So notice that once I do load this out, all of a sudden you can see my pearl just land in the distance. That's because this chunk that it fell into happened to be beyond the entity processing chunks. So overall, I still recommend just using ender pearl stasis chambers and activating them with redstone rather than trying to move the player really fast over the ender pearl. Now speaking of ender pearls, they also fix a bug related to ender pearls when getting teleported over and getting unloaded in another dimension. Now this bug is actually a new one that just came up in 1.21, but we had this bug in the past before where ender pearls would forget who their owner was, and this could happen when you leave the world. And I used the previous fix to make this really fast obsidian farm at the time using a teleporting player with ender pearls. So if I let the pearl get teleported over into another dimension, log out, and then when I log back in again, the pearl's unloaded on the other side, ready to hit some wall over there, just hasn't quite reached it. And if I throw an item through, it should load those chunks, so the pearl should teleport and hit the wall and teleport me over there, but except it doesn't, because I completely forgot who it was. So now it will continue to work like it did prior to the full release. It fixes another related bug to portals, and that is if you would be writing something as you go through the end fountain, you should be given the end credits, but instead, even on the first time, you would get teleported immediately over. Now I check to make sure that the players writing also get the end credits. Another bug related to writing things through portals is the direction you were facing when going through a portal in a minecart was not kept when you would come out the other side. As you can imagine, this is pretty important if you're trying to do like a farm where you're keeping the player facing a certain direction. So now with this fix, you can make interdimensional different farms and consistently have the player like holding something and harvesting something. Or like in my recent video about my maze farm, having the player hold the shield always towards the breeze, no matter which trial spawner you are currently at. There was also this new bug which was also related to passengers. Now in the full release of 1.21, there was a bug related to the zombified piglins that spawn directly inside of nether portals that are jockeys. So you might know how nether portals in the overworld once in a while will put in a zombified piglin. This is using random ticks and they'll spawn in here and usually walk around in your overworld. This mechanic is actually completely different than how my nether portal farms work. As you guys know, I was the first one to come up with mobs spawning directly into nether portals to make extremely fast farms, and since my initial designs, many people have reused it. When it comes to the random tick zombified piglins, it uses random ticks rather than mob spawning, and this is only applied to the overworld portals and not here to the nethers. And this was just done to make it seem like the zombified piglins were actually coming out from the nether into the overworld. But the reality is that the game actually will put them based off of how many portal blocks there is, and move them downward into the first solid blocks. If you would remove these blocks, it would place them down onto the iron blocks. So hopefully that makes sense, as I see this as a common misconception in the technical Minecraft community. And the bug that was fixed is related to when the game puts in these zombified piglins inside of the portal here. If it happens to put in a chicken jockey, the zombie variants that are on top of the chickens are technically passengers. That means the chicken down below is the thing that actually gets teleported when it comes in contact with a portal. So if the game would use random ticks to put in a zombified piglin into the portal, it would immediately get teleported over. So instead what it does is it will put in a piglin that has a portal cooldown with a number, so it can't actually get teleported inside the portal once it gets placed in with random ticks. The problem is that the piglin on top was getting the portal cooldown, but now that jockeys can get teleported in 1.21, the chicken was actually getting teleported because it didn't have this cooldown. So if you build a portal block pigment farm like my design here, Rather than the jockeys being in the overworld side, they would be immediately teleported over into another dimension, which would make my chicken jockey farm much easier to separate the jockeys from all the big zombified piglins. But this behavior of the chickens immediately teleporting where all the rest of them weren't teleporting wasn't intended. Now the game will correctly also give the chickens a portal cooldown so that they can't actually get teleported away. So you can take advantage of this before the next full release if you're trying to get a very rare specific type of zombified piglin. You can learn more about rare types of mobs in the game, including different variations of jockeys, in my playlist all about rare mobs. In the past, you could have zombified piglins, when they take damage, have a chance of spawning in a reinforcement that was a zombie. Since they are also considered zombies, they would just spawn these in, and we would often see these inside of gold farms using piglins, as they used to also spawn directly onto magma. Now they did change it so they no longer spawn in magma, so you rarely see this. You can see how this zombie here spawned on the stone platform in the nether dimension just by having zombified piglins that are mad at the player and also taking damage that have a tag to spawn in reinforcements. Now, as most of you guys know, I was the first person to design a reinforcement farm where I set up special floors where only reinforcements would spawn on top of, so I could spawn in tons of zombies even though the mob cap was full. I also later implemented this into making a drown farm and shared my idea with Tango Tech prior to anyone else using this idea, and Tango Tech even used it in his later Hermitcraft episode. But today they made a change to reinforcements. What they changed is that zombified piglins will no longer spawn in normal zombies as a reinforcement. Now when a piglin zombie wants to spawn in reinforcements, it will now spawn in more zombified piglins rather than the zombies. This will actually help improve the rates of the piglin gold farms like this one here, which I'm also using in my beacon farm, as when these guys want to spawn reinforcements, they can actually spawn them on the magma, since they will also be zombified piglins. This will slightly increase the rates of these farms, as these reinforcements can go above the mob cap. This also means that villager zombies that have the reinforcement tag can spawn in more villager zombies, which could be an alternative way to get a villager to make a villager breeder. Also, husk will summon in more husk, so if they ever change it so that husk drops sand or dust, this could be a way to make a sand farm. And of course, drowns, for them to spawn in more drowns, they need to have the requirement of water like a drown would to spawn in. You can still make copper farms using zombies, but they won't be as efficient because you'll only get reinforcements to spawn in more zombies. And once they convert to drowned, they'll no longer have a chance of spawning in more zombies, but instead we'll be checking for water to spawn in more drowns. And some of you with a keen eye might have noticed that in my original Ender Pearl warp trick, where I was able to get to the world border in less than 1 minute, all in survival. And in that video, if you look off to the side, you can see that I have these walls, as I originally discovered the portal warping trick while working on a new type of reinforcement farm using walls and fences. Since reinforcements can spawn on very small ledges where typical mobs would not. They also fix a bug related to how armor is placed onto mobs. Now in the past, the way they would place on armor is that there would first be a chance of it to spawn with a helmet on, and if that succeeded, then the game would attempt to place a chest plate on it, and then if that would succeed, only then would it try to place leggings on it. If only that succeeded, would it try to put the boots on. This is why having a zombie in full gear is so rare. But what was actually happening is that it was doing this in reverse. So it was putting the boots on, and then the leggings, and then the chest plate, and then the helmet. Now this is something we notice when trying to go for the Protection 8 rare helmets. So they fix it so that it works the way it was intended. So now they'll get the helmet first, which does protect them from sunlight. So overall you'll have more mobs that will survive the daylight, at least for a little bit until their helmet breaks. Something we noticed in snapshots is that zombies weren't using the mace weapon properly. These guys can actually pick up other items, including new weapons, but now they added it so that if they will fall off a ledge and attack something, they can actually do more damage, because the mace has the special property to do more damage the farther you fall. And you can put other enchantments on it so it does even more damage. This would be a great prank to put on your friends, just have a zombie sitting up there. It won't despawn, and they walk by, it just jumps down and one hits them. If you feed a parrot while holding the mace, you get the overkill advancement, which you typically have to do 50 hearts of damage in a single hit with the mace in order to get. Now this bug was actually fixed in the past, but it happened to sneak its way back into the game. When it came to things dismounting, such as when these jockeys have their mounts killed, and this could sometimes cause them to clip through the walls and escape outside. So with this resolved, you shouldn't have jockeys ending up in weird spots like inside of walls suffocating, but instead placed in a more safe area. Villagers will no longer attempt to pick up banners that they can't reach. Raids try to spawn around the player on the lowest block. So if you're way up in the air, they'll spawn really low, but they'll be so far away from the player that they'll despawn. And since they're no longer in the game, then all of a sudden the village feels safe, and it will consider the raid was successfully removed, which will make the villager very happy and can even give you hero of the village if you took part in killing one of the raiders. Now a raid won't start unless it can place in the raid in a reasonable distance from the village. So if I come near this villager and start the raid, now the raid will try to be placed in within a reasonable distance of that villager there, which typically is up on top of this platform here. Since it's not a reasonable distance from the village down here, it actually fails. So this actually breaks my simple raid farm, where in 1.21 it was actually still working. So now we'll have to make sure the villager is at least somewhat close to where it's trying to place in the raiders. And then we can always remove the center of the village down lower by using a second villager. But this is just my simple design where I'm trying to use just a single villager, and that's why we move the player, rather than having several villagers to move the actual raid location. By the way, if you're wondering how to run my different raid farms in 1.21, I did cover that all in this video here, which I'll link down in the description. There's a problem if you sat here underneath of the dragon in survival, and if you're wearing an elytra, the dragon is actually trying to push you, but it seems like there was a disconnect between the server side and the client side, and because of this, it would increase your stat when it came to distance flown. Because I thought you were flying with the elytra because it keeps thinking that Ender Dragon's sending you with a whole bunch of momentum. And when you would eventually get pushed by the dragon, it would then use all that momentum that you were gathering earlier to make your statistics for flying with the elytra really high. Notice I gained like over 10,000 kilometers flown, and all I did is get pushed from there to over there. And this bug was fixed today, along with another fix where just in general when you would fly with the elytra, it would double the distance that you actually flown when it came to your statistics. Now the way they fix this, I'm not sure. They might have made it so that there's not like a disconnect between like the client and server side, so that if the dragon does try to push you, you actually do get moved, otherwise you're not actually getting moved. Now this client versus server disconnect is used in a lot of different things, such as like in ghost blocks you can get the player to excel downwards despite them not moving, and you can use that to your advantage. Now speedrunners actually do use this with the dragon, as they collect a whole bunch of like knockback from the dragon, and then they will shoot an arrow at the dragon while the game thinks they have a whole bunch of momentum, and this will apply their momentum to the arrow, doing a whole bunch of damage, so much that they can actually one-hit the dragon, which is pretty crazy. But this is extremely difficult to pull off with just a bow and arrow, and it's a lot easier to make a whole machine, similar to my breeze cannon, where I can launch arrows really fast with a small device and actually one-hit the dragon, wither, and even the warden. If you guys want to build that machine up in your world and learn more about it, it is in the description. Now another slightly different type of redundancy was fixed day, and this has to do with the TNT explosion calculations. When it does explosions, obviously it has to do a lot of different calculations and how the explosions go out where and which blocks it should destroy. But since it introduces the breeze wind charges and how they explode without doing any damage, they accidentally made it so that the TNT was doing twice as many checks in order to do the proper explosion. This was creating more lag when it comes to large scale amounts of TNT. Now TNT has always been able to destroy stuff like minecarts, armor stands, and item frames, even when it's submerged in water. But that all changes today, so now TNT cannot destroy these things if it's in water, which is really useful in compact farms where explosions are going off near these things. Bees will now get angry at the player if they ignite the TNT and blow up their hive, when before they would just ignore them. They also fixed a few other bugs related to bees. Now one of them was this weird bug where bees would occasionally freeze in front of their hives. The next one being that if you would cover up a flower, the bees would try to get to that flower, but they wouldn't actually be able to get it, so then they would just end up going in circles above it. This was causing like one bee here to try to go for a different flower rather than the one that's closest to it. And bees will no longer give up on trying to go to their nest, where sometimes they would just constantly keep wandering until they got really far away and they just never ended up going home. So if you notice these problems with your honey farm, it should be improved in the next version. Now typically bees, when they go to a flower, they have some pollen which they can use to grow up crops. I took advantage of this and made this villager bee setup, where when the bees go back and forth between their flower and their hive, they end up pollinating these crops, which a villager will automatically replant, which essentially makes not only a bee farm, but also a crop farm that needs no player nearby. But when it came to this whole flower pollinating thing, it turns out that the cave vines that had the flowers could do an infinite amount of pollination, rather than just the limited of 10. So this could be used to have bees continuing to grow up crops, and then the villager just replant them. But this was not intended, so it's now fixed. They changed how grass gets bone meal. Before, if a grass was short and wanted to grow tall, it could try to do this even if there was a block above it, and this would waste bone meal. So they added it so that grass, as well as ferns, seagrass, as well as sea pickles, won't waste bone meal if they can't actually grow. And this was visible here in my automatic tree farm that needs no player. It uses azaleas and my moss bone meal farm. Get tons of moss to automatically run this thing, but you can see it is attempting to grow an azalea inside, but there's often a chance they'll end up with grass. And then when a tree grows in, sometimes the log just above the grass won't actually get destroyed, so there'll be a log right in here, and despite that log being in there, the game will still place in a grass and then try to bone meal that grass, wasting bone meal from this dispenser. So with the change, this will make this slightly more efficient, but it does not affect my fern or grass farm. This would make my sea pickle farm slightly more efficient as well, where we have a single sea pickle in the center here, and then when this would get bone meal, it would apply sea pickles out in these outer rings, which would then get destroyed and collected. The only thing is, there's a short period where these pistons extend, breaking off the other sea pickles, so there's more room for new ones to grow in, but during this period, it's possible to bone meal this sea pickle in the center. Essentially, we're wasting bone meal and it wasn't producing anything new. But with this change, now the bone meal won't get wasted unless it can actually grow something, which will help this out. You guys can check out all of these different farms in my farm everything spreadsheet, where I'm designing an automatic farm for every single item in the game of Minecraft. They also change out the empty chest for a hopper and barrel. That way players know that they can throw in their supplies and have them stored here before going into a new challenge room. They also added in a smaller hallway chamber between the hallways and the actual challenge rooms, which include short challenges the players have to do before getting into the main one. Now throughout the snapshots, they're trying to fix these bugs related to wind charges and them accidentally doing damage to the player. Now in this case, the player is supposed to take damage when they jump off of this tower here, but the wind charges not doing damage to you was actually be implying even if you land off of like a ledge, you can see you don't get any damage. Now it does what you would expect. Once you land, you don't take damage, but anything later you do. Now breezes got smarter today. In the past, when you would get attacked by a breeze, you could just hide for a little while, and then the breeze would just end up forgetting about you. And this is different than something like a skeleton. If you would hide behind the wall, the skeleton is just going to walk around the wall to where you're hiding. The breeze also got smart like this, so if you're hiding behind something, they're just going to come around and attack you. I always thought this was intentional. It's kind of a unique behavior of the breeze where it kind of just attacks you if you're in its territory, but it doesn't pursue you. But apparently this wasn't the case, so they changed it. When before, breezes won't attack you if you're really close to them. Now breezes will attempt to attack you even though you're close, but it seems that they actually don't attack you. So you step a little ways away from them, but they at least will try to attack you when you're in the same boat as them, when before they wouldn't. Oddly enough, I was just making a video talking about this. So it's pretty cool to see them fix this. So I guess you can make a little shooting turret with a breeze trying to hit you, but instead it shoots in front of you, despite some of the trial spawners having slime spawn from them. In some cases, like this area here, there's not enough room for the slime to actually spawn in, so they now give it more room. Something that I noticed that was kind of odd is that some of the traps, which are these dispensers with buttons on them, were being placed inside of the walls of the trial chamber. I wasn't sure if this was intended or not, but apparently it was a bug because they will no longer do this. There was a bunch of really small, out of place blocks and inconsistencies and even unsymmetrical placement of blocks within the trial chambers, and they came in and fixed all of these. One of which was related to vaults. In some cases, depending on how I placed in the different pieces within one of these chambers, it could end up not putting in an ominous vault. Now normally you can't continue to be blocking while attacking with your sword, but if you hold up your shield and then go through a nether portal, the shield will drop down, but the shield will continue to actually think that it's up. So you can block arrows at the same time using your sword to attack. But this disconnect between the server and the client wasn't intended, so that this was fixed so you can't do it anymore. While in the crafting grid, you can now drop everything that you just crafted, rather than having to drop them one at a time by spamming Q. They now added it so you can hold Control plus Q to drop everything. Now this would have been very useful to have back when you would have to manually craft everything, but now that we have auto crafters, this fix is not as big of a change. Another problem related to going through portals has to do with the respawn anchor. Notice it has one charge and it should only lose a charge if I actually die. But if you just leave the end dimension going through like the exit end portal, it would use up a charge on the respawn anchor as if you died. Now this was only a problem in 1.21, but it won't be in the next update. Now normally you can't do any damage to an allay once you give it an item. But with the recent changes to fire aspect, even if you would hit this zombie on the side, it would then apply it to nearby mobs now. But it wasn't intended to actually set your allay on fire because you normally can't do that, but it was accidentally doing that. So they fixed it so the allays will no longer get set on fire this way. Ominous banners will no longer lose their orange name tag when put through an anvil. Now you might recall how the enchanted glitter got reduced by quite a bit on armor. So this is unenchanted and this is enchanted armor. You can almost hardly tell the difference. But this reduced glitter wasn't being applied to shields, which made it more difficult to see the banner pattern on them. So they reduced that in today's snapshot. You can always come into your settings here and go down here to control your glitter strength. Even if you set it to 100%, it still makes it really difficult to tell the difference between enchanted and unenchanted, where if you compare it to the actual item, it's pretty easy to tell which one I'm holding in my hand. Do you think they should make it easier to tell the difference? In some rare circumstances when people get an explorer map, such as like trying to find a mansion, the little icon on the map for the mansion was missing. Now there was this really weird bug if the player would be given a whole bunch of damage using a command while having the totem of undying. The player would be given a special tag saying that they're not like really alive, so even if they take more damage, you can see they have no hearts whatsoever. They can't actually die. Now in the past you could be in this undead state and it would look really weird, but I don't think you can do this in survival. I think it has to do something with how the command puts damage onto the player. Now, if you would use a command to give yourself the maximum 32-bit limit of levels in Minecraft, this is 2.1 billion XP levels. You can see it's an insane number on your XP bar here. And then if you would add just one more level to this, it looped all the way around to where you have no levels once again. And then if you give yourself some more XPs, it starts adding onto the XP bar, but starting from the very beginning. As you might already know, I was the first person to reach the Minecraft limit of XPs in survival. But with that limit, it's a little bit different where when you reach it, your XP bar and levels just stop going up. It never actually loops back around. But in earlier days of Minecraft, there was different things in the game that would actually reach these limits and then loop back around. But for the most part, all these have been fixed. When setting the game rules so spectators cannot generate chunks, if you would spectate something, you weren't able to actually unspectate it just by crouching like you normally would. And we noticed this during our live streams. It got pretty annoying, but I would just go into creative mode to get back out of it. But now the actual bug was resolved. For some reason in 1.21, they accidentally made it so that the Elder Guardian's particle effect, which is this little thing that you'll see when you get the mining fatigue, instead of coming down from the top and kind of like jump scaring you, it got reversed and it's coming from below. So they set this back to being normal. Now if you change your game rule of mob griefing to false, this means that typically mobs can't break stuff, but there was still a wide variety of things that could be broken, such as breezes, wind charges breaking different entities. So that will no longer happen. A bug that got into 1.21 full release was this one here, where players that were sneaking, names were hardly visible. So they reverted it back to how it was before, like this. And while they were at it, they also fixed a bug report that I made quite a while ago, back in 2020, which also had to do with players' name tags when they're sneaking, but you can see how it was making some of the name difficult to read. And oddly enough, this would actually change depending on which way the player is facing. So this has also been removed so it looks consistent. I don't know how this happened, but somehow they accidentally made the stars to be smaller. So on the left hand side you can see they're a little bit bigger, where on the right they are now smaller. So they went ahead and converted them back to being this size. Now in the past there was a problem where players would be placed underneath of water when they're spawned into a world, and this problem came back again, so they removed it. Now, a really annoying bug that I noticed for quite some time when it comes to creative menu, I always like to drop a whole bunch of stuff out of the creative menu. But sometimes when you drop an entire stack of stuff, instead of actually dropping, it would just delete it. This was really annoying, so I'm glad they fixed it. If you're playing on a super flat world or a specialty world, this next change will help you out most likely because they fix several bugs related to how the game determines where the sea level is. In a normal world, this is at Y level 63, but if you're playing like a super flat world, this should be way down low, but the game still thought it was up high. So now you'll be able to get stuff like dolphins, drowns, turtles, squids, axolotls, glow squids, ocelots, phantom generation point changes, bats location, icebergs, ocean monuments, ocean runes, biome temperatures, and some other smaller changes. They made improvements when it comes to the tick rate when using higher render distance, as well as they also increase the performance when it comes to loading and generating chunks. Like I say, I already noticed the difference. When large amounts of item frames were being saved, it was causing poor saving performance. This is also true when it came to maps. So if you have a map area with tons of item frames and maps, you should notice an improvement in this version. And adjusting your settings will no longer send tons of packets to the server and kicking you on servers that have anti-cheats. There was also a funny joke that was left in the Minecraft code with the message, "You just lost the game." The only problem was when they moved some stuff around, they accidentally moved this a bit further in the code, so it's less likely for people to see this actual prank. So in this bug report, person explains this and they actually got Mojang to put it back at the top. Now using creative, you can get stacks up to 99, but if you would combine these stacks together and then drop it on the ground, it would actually crash you from your own game. So this won't happen anymore. They fixed a whole bunch of bugs related to visuals. I think this has to do something with the new bundle and how some of the different pieces are somewhat transparent. And then it looks like they went through the bug report fixing all related bugs to translucent pixels. And they also fixed several bugs related to more minor things as well as behind the scene things. They also fixed problems related to modified versions of spawners, including a game crashing bug which would occur if you had a crossbow with quick charge 0 enchantment. One of the first 400 bugs ever reported in Minecraft was fixed today. This was way back in 2012, and it had to do with server properties. These are properties you can set up for your server so that whenever you start a new world, they'll automatically use these by default. One of them has to do with toggling mobs and toggling NPCs as well as spawning in monsters. The problem is if you would set these to false, not only would it stop new mobs from spawning in, it would also automatically delete any old mobs or ones that you try to spawn in, like using spawn eggs. And this was not intended, so it's finally been changed after all of these years. They also moved a lot of stuff over to the data pack as well as the resource pack. Now when it comes to reporting players' skins in Minecraft or their names, they made these smaller changes. What specific questions do you guys have about these changes? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys next one. Bye bye!